Philippine security forces confirmed that at least one Filipino suicide bomber was behind a deadly attack last month, in a first for the Asian country.
President Duterte said he wanted a stronger military and police force to prepare for dangerous times ahead in the Philippines.
Britain's ambassador to Washington, Kim Darroch, said he was resigning after drawing U.S. President Donald Trump's ire for criticizing his administration in leaked confidential cables to London.
And Japan's Hayabusa 2 probe begins descending for its final touchdown on a distant asteroid, hoping to collect samples that could shed light on the solar system.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. First, the Philippine National Police, or PNP, Internal Affairs Service, or IAS, will lead the investigation into the collateral damage incurred in an anti-drug operation in Rodriguez, Rizal that resulted in the death of 4 persons. That includes a 3-year-old girl. Now, the move, according to PNP Chief General Oscar Albayalde, is to expedite the conduct of the probe amid a public uproar over the incident. Last June 29, a 3-year-old Micah Olpina was caught in a crossfire during police operations against suspected drug pushers in Rodriguez, Rizal. Olpina was among the 4 fatalities during the operations, along with Senior Sergeant Conrad Cabigao, the girl's father, Renaldo Olpina, and an unidentified companion.
That is really very, very unfortunate, no? That is very, very unfortunate. This is the very reason kung bakit kasama ito sa aming internal cleansing. As I have mentioned earlier, lahat yan ng mga incidents na yan, including yung mga incidents in the past, pati yung mga incident dun sa Pasay way back years before na may bata dun sa isang bus station, no, na namatay din yung bata, and also other police operations, kasama na rin yan yung sa Luneta incident. Lahat yan ay sinasama na sa I have directed the training service, the director of our training service, ipalabas yan during training of our commanders at our mga PNP personnel, para ito will become now a lessons learned sa amin at hindi na maulit itong. As of this time, wala pa. As of this time, yung resulta sa ballistics, wala pa, and I've directed the IAS to take the lead already. And expedite the conduct of the investigation. Kasi yung una, ang nag-lead dyan is the Regional Investigation Division of Propor A. Just yesterday, I asked the IAS, I gave directive to ating IAS to take the lead already and expedite the conduct of, para mapabilis at sila siguro. Although, without the directive naman, they conduct the motu proprio, alam naman natin, motu proprio investigation. Pero just the same, nagbigay na rin tayo ng direktiba sa IAS natin. And we have to wait doon sa ballistics examination dahil a minimum of 20 firearms yan ang binabalistics doon. Kasi accordingly, pati backup, pati yung raiding team, ang total ng personnel na involved doon, 20.
He also said that they are currently waiting for the results of the ballistic examination on all the firearms of the policemen to determine which among them was fired and eventually hit the child. The IAS is generally tasked to run after erring policemen and investigate lapses and commission of irregularities by policemen in the conduct of the duties. The PNP earlier welcomed the Commission on Human Rights, or CHR's, call for a full investigation onto the incident. PNP spokesperson Colonel Bernard Banak said such investigation would also help them determine all circumstances surrounding, quote, that fateful encounter that claimed 4 human lives. Meanwhile, Colonel Resty Damaso, Chief of Police of Rodriguez, Rizal, and 19 other cops were relieved from their posts following the operation. The 20 policemen have been placed under the personnel and holding unit of the Rizal Provincial Police Office while investigation is ongoing.
Philippine security forces confirmed Wednesday that at least one Filipino suicide bomber was behind a deadly attack last month in a first for the Asian country. Norman Lasuca and one other yet to be identified suspect blew themselves up outside a military camp on the remote southern island of Jolo on June 28 in an attack that's also killed 3 soldiers and 2 civilians.
The Regional Crime Laboratory Office of the Police Regional Office 11 has revealed that one of the suspected suicide bombers in the 1st Brigade Combat Team temporary headquarters in Indanan, Sulu last June 28, 2019 can be concluded as a Filipino. The PNP Regional Crime Lab Office 11 said in a report that reference DNA standards were taken from Ms. Vilman Alam Lasuca and Mr. Al-Hussein Alam Lasuca, claimant mother and brother of one of the suspected bombers. Moreover, the DNA results examined by the Crime Laboratory Office 11 forensic DNA analyst, Police Major Lorepes Paliado, concluded that there is 99.99% probability match of the DNA sample taken from Ms. Vilman Lasuca and samples of the alleged suicide bomber. Hence, it can be concluded that one of the alleged suicide bombers is the son of Ms. Vilman Alam Lasuca, the Crime Laboratory Office 11 said in a laboratory report. The information na nakuha natin, this is a locally initiated attack organized by the Abu Sayyaf group. The report that as claimed by ISIS, they are the ones responsible for this, is still up for validation and remains to be seen. So as of now, wala pong ebidensya, papatunay na may kaugnayan ng ISIS dito. Ito ay base naman sa kanilang statement or claim. But as so far as yung nangyaring incident sa Sulu, we know for a fact that a lot of incidents have already happened, perpetrated by the local Abu Sayyaf group.
The Jolo bombing marks a worrying escalation of militancy driven by the influence of the Islamic State group in Southeast Asia. But suicide attacks have been used extremely rarely, with foreign fighters blamed for the few that have been carried out. National Police spokesman Bernard Banak described last month's bombing as a locally initiated attack by the Abu Sayyaf group, or organized by the Abu Sayyaf group. Philippine authorities said the 2 suspected Jolo bombers were tested for DNA and one matched that of Lasuca's mother and brother, and are both Tausugs, the predominant Muslim ethnic group in Jolo.
The AFP and the PNP would like to allay fears of our countrymen, notwithstanding this development, where we can confirm and is now confirming that the incidents of the first suicide bombing in the Philippines perpetrated by a Filipino in the person of Norman Lasuca. This springs from the outcome of the joint investigation conducted by the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Philippine National Police as on the result of the DNA testing by the PNP of the samples taken from Mrs. Vilman Lasuca, the mother, and Al-Hussein Alam Lasuca, the brother, both Tausug Filipinos, and that of Norman Lasucan, the suicide bomber. We wish to highlight the fact that the AFP has its keen focus on Sulu to defeat the Abu Sayyaf group, put a stop to the terrorist activities and atrocities they commit against the people of Sulu, of Mindanao, and of our country. Aside from already existing troops in Sulu, the 11th Infantry Division was activated to intensify the conduct of surgical and focused military operations. In compliance to President Rodrigo Duterte, our Commander-in-Chief, directive to crush the menace that the Abu Sayyaf group brings, the 1st Brigade Combat Team of the Philippine Army, a Marine Battalion Landing Team, and another Army Infantry Battalion were deployed recently in Sulu. This is apart from the naval and air assets that are soon to be deployed in that island province. The AFP is actively pursuing and continuing with National Action Plan on preventing and countering violent extremism that aims to stop the spread of radicalism and violent extremism, and to insulate and cut the support of the nexus points of these local terrorist groups. We vigorously continue our collaboration and information sharing with our counterpart nations such as Indonesia, Malaysia, Australia, and the United States, to name a few, to harness our conduct of operations.
Meanwhile, President Duterte said he wanted a stronger military and police force. That is to prepare for dangerous times ahead in the Philippines. He also urged Congress to pass measures that will provide the armed forces and the Philippines and the Philippine National Police with more assets and equipment before the end of his term in 2022.
I swore to protect the people and preserve the Republic of the Philippines. So I would like, at any other time, we have acquired so many armaments. And there are things, kukunti na lang, which I hope that Congress would tide us over to complete the instruments that we need in dealing especially with terrorism. I hope that by the time I make my exit, nandyan na lahat yan, because I am not belittling the events to come or the person coming in to be the next president. Hindi ko alam kung sino. And I'd rather that I live with a strong military and police and equipped to challenge the enemies of the state, especially terrorism. I see a very dangerous times ahead, and I hope that we'll be able to contain whatever there is to really to. But lumalabas nga yung pawis sa kamay ko just thinking about if it would go ori outside of Sulu and Basilan Islands. So that I said, I must be prepared. And nabili na ko na ho yung mga kailangan, but there are still a few things that I must have for my armed forces and the police. And one of these days, I will call for a for a time to talkative, and we'll talk about it because it's really needed by the country.
Meanwhile, PNP spokesperson Colonel Bernard Banac, for his part, described President Duterte's remarks as an accurate and honest assessment of trends in terrorism, transnational crime, and cross-border criminal activity. Noting that these problems required greater flexibility and capability of military and police forces, Mr. Banac thanked the national government for being responsive to the situation.
On the other hand, napaka-positibo ang outlook ng ating mga banyaga sa ating bansa. As mentioned a while ago by Brigadier General Revalo, we are ranked number 24 in the Forbes magazine survey, placing just below United States, which ranked number 23. So Philippines is ranked number 24, ahead of China, placed at number 26. Now, the survey says that the Philippines is the 24th best place to live, work, and do business. And on the part of the Filipinos, they have ranked and rated the performance of the president with 80% performance. So meaning, the outlook of the Filipinos is very positive, and there is no cause for alarm. It is a challenge for us, so we are continuously upgrading our capability and even yung modernization natin. So we have this capability enhancement program to further modernize and acquire more modern equipment. So we need all those, so far as information gathering is concerned. So it is a challenge, a real challenge for us to really monitor movements of suspected terrorists, and we're doing this in support to the armed forces of the Philippines.
The United States Embassy in Manila on Wednesday said Mina Chang will serve as an executive of the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, dismissing reports she will replace current Ambassador Sung Kim. We've seen this claim. It is not true. The embassy, though, through acting press attaché Trude Raisin, said in a statement. On Tuesday, reports surfaced that Chung, currently assigned as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the State Department Bureau of Conflict and Stabilization Operations, is being eyed as the next U.S. ambassador to Manila, with presidential spokesperson Salvador Panelo even noting the reports. The embassy said President Donald Trump's intent to nominate Chung as the assistant administrator of the USAID for the Bureau of Asia was announced in September 2018. The embassy clarified that the nomination was referred to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in January 2019. There have been no additional White House announcements regarding her nomination to the USAID position.
On a lighter note, long before Lito Ramirez was one of the Philippines' first homegrown rugby stars. He was a 6-year-old orphan addicted to sniffing glue who survived on trash and begging. The name rugby still resonated with Ramirez years after he stopped using and was building his life in a Manila orphanage. Counselors there had urged him to pick a sport, but he didn't like football or basketball, which is the national obsession here. So then they asked him if he wanted to give rugby a try. Take a look.
Huh?
Ay yung pagkalam ko na na rugby siya yung para sinisingot sa So, nag-choose ako ng rugby kasi gumagamit ako noon ng rugby before. So, kala ko yun. Kaya pinili ko yung rugby na sports.
Tagal-lakad ka. Okay, kailangan dapat may
makita ko yung magulang ko. Ay yung nasa isip ko na parang ay yung pinaka gusto kong mangyari sa buhay ko rin. Kasi nami-miss ko rin sila. Hindi ko alam kung buhay pa sila o hindi.
We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Japan's Hayabusa 2 probe begins descending for its final touchdown on a distant asteroid, hoping to collect samples that could shed light on the solar system. By early afternoon, JAXA said the probe had descended around 5 kilometers and was on track to touch down Thursday on the Ryugu asteroid, some 300 million kilometers from Earth. If successful, it will be the second time it has landed on the desolate asteroid as part of a complex mission that has also involved sending rovers and robots. The mission hopes to collect pristine materials from beneath the surface of the asteroid.
"24 people have died, including 2 pregnant women with their unborn children, in tribal fighting in Papua New Guinea's lawless highlands. It prompted the Prime Minister to vow to avenge the brutal killings. Highland clans have fought each other in Papua New Guinea for centuries, but an influx of automatic weapons has made clashes more deadly and escalated the cycle of violence. Now, the incident has shocked the country, and recently appointed Prime Minister James Marape, who is from the province. In one attack in Carida, fighters are said to have hacked to death 6 women, 8 children, as well as 2 pregnant women and their unborn children in a 30-minute rampage. Local health worker Pils Colo said it was hard to recognize some of the body parts and posted images of remains bundled together using mosquito nets as makeshift body bags. Prime Minister James Marape vowed more security deployments and warned the perpetrators, "Your time is up." The government in Port Moresby holds little sway up here. These remote villages are guided by their local laws when the state is absent.
And even if they do report, sometimes it takes time. So that's why people are now decided to take the law into their hands and apply justice amongst themselves the way they want to see it. I mean, like jungle justice, you know.
Democratic Party leaders called for the resignation of President Donald Trump's Secretary of Labor over a secret plea deal he made a decade ago with a wealthy hedge fund manager accused of sexually abusing young girls. Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta, 50, was serving as a federal prosecutor in Florida when his office entered into the controversial plea agreement with financier Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein, 66, was charged on Monday by the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York with 1 count of sex trafficking of minors and 1 count of conspiracy to commit sex trafficking of minors.
Epstein is charged in a 2-count indictment. First, conspiracy to commit sex trafficking, and second, the substantive crime of sex trafficking of underage girls. Beginning in at least 2002 and continuing until 2005, Epstein is alleged to have abused dozens of victims by causing them to engage in sex acts with him at his mansion in New York and at his estate in Palm Beach, Florida. The victims, all underage girls at the time of the alleged conduct, were given hundreds of dollars in cash after each encounter, either by Epstein or by one of Epstein's employees.
President Trump told reporters on Tuesday that Acosta has been an excellent Secretary of Labor.
But the fact is, he's been a very good Secretary of Labor. What happened 12 or 15 years ago with respect to when he was a U.S. Attorney, I think in Miami, is it Miami?
Yes,
you know, if you go back and look at everybody else's decisions, whether it's a U.S. Attorney or an Assistant U.S. Attorney or a judge, you go back 12 or 15 years ago or 20 years ago and look at their past decisions, I would think you'd probably find that they would wish they maybe did it a different way. What I know and what I do know is that he's been a great, really great Secretary of Labor. The rest of it we'll have to look at. We'll have to look at it very carefully. But you're talking about a long time ago. And again, it was a decision made, I think, not by him, but by a lot of people. So we're going to look at it very carefully. We'll be looking at that very carefully, okay?
The well-connected Epstein, whose friends have included Trump, former President Bill Clinton, and Prince Andrew, faced similar charges in Florida a decade ago, but managed to escape a stiff sentence through the plea agreement with Acosta's office. President Trump described Epstein as a terrific guy in a 2002 New York Magazine article, but he said that he was not a fan of his.
I had a falling out with him a long time ago. I don't think I've spoken to him for 15 years. I wasn't a fan. I was not, a long time ago. I'd say maybe 15 years. I was not a fan of his. That I can tell you. I was not a fan of his. So.
The 2 top Democrats in Congress, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House of Representatives, and Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, both called for Acosta's resignation. Here, Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer.
This week, billionaire Jeffrey Epstein was indicted in New York on federal sex trafficking charges. The newly released evidence of Epstein's behavior involving dozens of children is sickening, is appalling, is despicable. Epstein should have been behind bars years ago, but unfortunately, Secretary of Labor Alex Acosta cut Epstein a sweetheart deal while Acosta was a U.S. attorney in Florida in 2008. While a federal prosecutor, Acosta signed a non-prosecution agreement that allowed Epstein and his co-conspirators to remain free and evade justice despite overwhelming evidence. Mr. Acosta hid this agreement from Epstein's victims. No one can figure out why Mr. Epstein was able to persuade U.S. Attorney Acosta not to prosecute, other than that Epstein could afford high-powered, high-priced attorneys. I am calling on Secretary Acosta to resign. It is now impossible for anyone to have confidence in Secretary Acosta's ability to lead the Department of Labor. If he refuses to resign, President Trump should fire him. Instead of prosecuting a predator and serial sex trafficker of children, Acosta chose to let him off easy. This is not acceptable. We cannot have, as one of the leading appointed officials in America, someone who has done this.
Yet another court has ruled that President Trump cannot block you on Twitter just for disagreeing with him. A federal appeals court ruled that U.S. President Donald Trump cannot legally block users on Twitter based on their political differences with him, affirming a lower court decision. The Second Circuit Appeals Court sidestepped the question of the president's free speech rights under the Constitution's First Amendment on a privately owned internet platform, but affirmed that President Trump had effectively created a public forum for official White House business. The ruling comes in response to a lawsuit filed by a group of Twitter users and the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University, alleging that President Trump improperly blocked comments from his political opponents. Plaintiffs, including a University of Maryland professor, a Texas police officer, and a New York comic, said they were blocked from the @RealDonaldTrump account after posting tweets critical of his policies. The Justice Department, which represented the president, has the option to appeal the decision to the U.S. Supreme Court. We are disappointed with the court's decision and are exploring possible next steps, Justice Department spokesperson Kelly Laco said in an emailed statement. As we argued, President Trump's decision to block users from his personal Twitter account does not violate the First Amendment.
President Donald Trump assailed Britain's ambassador to the United States as a pompous fool and slammed outgoing Premier Theresa May's foolish policies in a second straight day of virulent attacks triggered by the leak of unflattering diplomatic cables. The wacky ambassador that the UK foisted upon the United States is not someone we are thrilled with. A very stupid guy. He should speak to his country and Prime Minister May about their failed Brexit negotiation and not be upset with my criticism of how badly it was handled. I told Theresa May how to do that deal, but she went her own foolish way, was unable to get it done. A disaster. I don't know the ambassador, but have been told he is a pompous fool. Tell him the USA now has the best economy military anywhere in the world by far. London has been scrambling to stem the damage caused by the leaked documents in which Derek described the U.S. leader as inept and his White House as uniquely dysfunctional. Britain's Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt, who is running to replace May, offered his public support for the envoy, whose term expires in January, saying he would keep Derek in place if he took office. At Real Donald Trump friends speak frankly, so I will. These comments are disrespectful and wrong to our Prime Minister and my country, Hunt tweeted. Your diplomats give their private opinions to Secretary Pompeo, and so do ours.
Meanwhile, Britain's ambassador to Washington, Kim Darroch, said on Wednesday he was resigning after drawing U.S. President Donald Trump's ire for criticizing his administration in leaked confidential cables to London, saying he was inept and the current situation is making it impossible for me to carry out my role as I would like, Darroch wrote in his resignation letter. He added, I believe in the current circumstances, the responsible course is to allow the appointment of a new ambassador.
Meanwhile, Conservative leadership rivals Jeremy Hunt and Boris Johnson clash in their first and last televised debate before party members vote for one of them to become the next British Prime Minister.
It's vanishingly inexpensive if you prepare. So, for instance, what we need to do is to make sure that the agricultural sector is properly safeguarded and that we have just-in-time supply chains properly protected, that we have deals on aviation and all that. Much of this work has been done. We're virtually that. And I'll just make one additional point. We will have, if we have to go out on no deal, we will have £39 billion to spend, which I think will be very helpful in lubricating the consequences of a no-deal Brexit.
Mr Hunt, and the difference between you and me is you are peddling optimism, and I'm saying we can make a tremendous...
Needs a bit of optimism,
Boris,
frankly.
why don't you... We can make...
I think we've had a belly full of defeatism.
We need...
I think it's very, very important not to envisage any circumstances in which we would fail to come out of the EU on October the 31st. I don't want to hold out to the EU the prospect that they might encourage my resignation by refusing to agree a deal.
Johnson, a former London mayor who preceded Hunt at the Foreign Office, is known for his rhetoric and jokes, but has been accused of having only a vague plan for office. A YouGov survey at the weekend suggested 74% of Tory members backed Johnson, but during the hour-long ITV program, Hunt showed he would not give up without a fight. He repeatedly interrupted and challenged Johnson, accusing him of failing to answer questions, including on whether he would resign if Brexit did not happen as promised.
To other news now, after purchasing an abandoned chapel in Leeds, United Kingdom, another chapel, this time in North Shields, has gotten a much-needed upgrade. The Iglesia Ni Cristo has refurbished the interior and exterior of this formerly Methodist chapel, transforming it to a beautiful church. It was purchased by the Iglesia Ni Cristo. It has undergone renovation and repair since March of this year. Aside from this, the Church of Christ is also non-stop in their corporate social activities in different parts of United Kingdom. Our EBC correspondent, JL Bautista, is at the scene. JL?
Today marks a milestone, not just for the community in North Shields, but for the members of the Church of Christ who are from the formerly known congregation of Sunderland, the United Kingdom.
These past few months before the chapel dedication, INC members have been frequently reaching out to the community through charitable work such as Fireman Appreciation Day, singing for a cause for the elderly, and community cleanup drives. Through these outreach programs, they were also able to introduce the INC faith. Having a permanent and dedicated house of worship, more people can learn about the INC, and it will intensify even more the efforts in helping those in need, making a difference in their community.
For many months, INC members from the District of United Kingdom have worked together in transforming the former Methodist chapel. Today, the house of worship magnificently stands tall, and many onlookers are in awe of its presence. INC members have traveled from many far distances, not just to see the newly renovated house of worship, but also witness the chapel dedication led by INC Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo D. Manalo.
Well, this is my fourth visit to a chapel dedication now, and each time I find it just so uplifting to actually see Brother Eduardo's words, and it's just an enjoyable day. Well, firstly, because I come from Colchester, we don't have our chapel at the moment, and to have your own chapel means you've got no time limits, especially with the choir performing and doing all that work. To have your own chapel means you can spend all day there, and it just means so much.
I think the charity works and the works to expand the church and the word of God here in the Northeast, it will have a strong influence in the community, and we're looking forward to that coming to Scotland as well.
Reporting from the chapel dedication in North Shields, United Kingdom, I am J.L. Bautista and I am 1 with 25.
Thank you, JL.
More news will be coming your way when Eagle News International returns.
For Business News, this is Cesar Vallejos. In a bid to strengthen the agriculture industry and support farmers, the Department of Agriculture closed a deal with the Israeli government for a 44 billion loan pesos to complete the proposed solar project, power plant project. Agriculture Secretary Emmanuel Piñol and Israel Ambassador to the Philippines, Rafael Harpas, on Tuesday signed the implementing agreement on agricultural cooperation at the DA Central Office in Quezon City. The IA on agricultural cooperation is the final output of a series of negotiations between Israel and Philippines, which started during the visit of President Duterte to Israel in 2018. The project will involve the establishment of 6,200 units of computerized solar-powered irrigation systems intended to irrigate 500,000 hectares of rice farms and other high-value agricultural products over the next 3 years. The prototypes are a donation from an Israeli company, which is also one of those interested in undertaking the SBIS projects in the Philippines. The prototypes are expected to be operational by the end of July. Israel Ambassador Harpas in an interview said that the agreement also includes that of the Mashav, the agency that offers international workshops and courses. Israel considers the Philippines as one of its closest friends in the region because it was the only country in Asia which gave refuge to Jewish refugees fleeing from Europe during World War II. The Philippines also voted for the creation of an independent state of Israel. The Department of Tourism on Wednesday expressed appreciation for the steps taken by Manila Mayor Isko Moreno in clearing up streets and sidewalks in Divisoria and other areas in the country's capital city, noting that this would help make destinations more accessible to tourists.
Of tourists. When tourists come here, immediately upon landing, they go to several sites here in Manila. They go to Intramuros, they go to Luneta, Rizal Park, they go to Binondo, and some even, especially Asians, they would go to Divisoria. The efforts of Manila Mayor Isko Moreno is very much appreciated in making the areas more accessible to tourists, because we are aiming to provide our tourists a more diverse tourist offerings here in Manila. So just imagine if our tourists can walk around the streets of Manila.
Alabado pointed out that Manila has always been a premier destination of tourists who, upon landing, would immediately visit several cities including Intramuros, Rizal Park, Divisoria, and Binondo. He described Divisoria as a shopping paradise, particularly for Southeast Asian tourists. Meanwhile, Alabado also addressed concerns on the relocation of vendors in Divisoria, noting that his department continues to work closely with the Manila Mayor's office to ensure that they get to keep their livelihood. According to Alabado, the tourism industry was responsible for creating 5.4 million jobs in 2018. More challenges there. The fishing island of Sibuto in Tawi-Tawi province will be the first fishing community with a floating solar farm to power ice making and cold storage equipment and serve as a fish convergence area, or PAYAO. In a meeting on Monday with executives of Aboitiz Power led by Tristan Aboitiz and regional directors of the Department of Agriculture and the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, at the DA Central Office, Sibuto Island was unanimously chosen to be the site of the multifunction floating solar farm. The floating solar farm, a new technology employed by solar power generation companies so as to minimize the use of valuable lands, is now being introduced in the Philippines by the Norwegian company SN Power in partnership with Aboitiz Power. The partner companies have established the first prototype in Magat Dam, Isabela, which is capable of generating 200 megawatts. DA Secretary Emmanuel Piñol learned about the new technology and proposed improving this to enhance the productivity of the fisheries sector. During the meeting, Aboitiz Power executives said the floating solar farms could be improvised to generate enough power to run ice making and cold storage facilities in far-flung and isolated fishing communities of the country, generate power which could be stored in batteries to provide light to the fishing communities, serve as a huge fish aggregating device, or PAYAO, where small fish species would gather and attract big fish species like tuna, and function as a fish cage in coves or near the coastlines for the production of high-value fish. Stock markets mostly fell Wednesday with investors awaiting key clues on the outlook for U.S. interest rates from Federal Reserve Chief Jerome Powell. The pound rebounded from more than two-year lows versus the dollar as official data showed Britain's economy rebounded in May with gross domestic product growth of 0.3% following GDP contraction of 0.4% in April. The pound caught some bid as the UK economy bounced back in May following the decline in April, noted Neil Wilson, chief market analyst at markets.com. But traders need to be careful as Brexit uncertainty remains the major drag on sterling, whilst the dollar is showing some resilience and could be exposed to significant upside risks if Powell today disappoints the market by not being as dovish as investors hope. Fed officials have helped spur a rally in world equities in recent weeks by taking an increasingly dovish tone regarding monetary policy, fueling expectations they would cut borrowing costs sharply to support a stuttering economy. France will stop reimbursing patients for homeopathic treatment from 2021, the health minister said in an interview published Wednesday, infuriating manufacturers but also disappointing doctors who wanted an immediate halt. Health Minister Agnes Buzyn, a former prominent doctor who has vowed to place scientific rigor at the heart of policy, said she had made the decision after a damning verdict of homeopathy by the National Health Authority published in June. Buzyn said the refunds paid by French Social Security, currently 30% of the treatment, will be phased down to 15% in 2020 and then to zero in 2021. She said the transition period would allow both patients and pharmaceutical companies to adapt to the new system. France's National Authority for Health had at the end of June concluded there was no benefit to alternative medicine, saying homeopathy had not scientifically demonstrated sufficient effectiveness to justify a reimbursement. Buzyn acknowledged the move could prove unpopular and emphasized it would not stop doctors prescribing homeopathic medicines or patients from buying them. French company Boiron, the world leader in homeopathic products, denounced the move as incomprehensible and incoherent. It asked for an urgent meeting with President Emmanuel Macron and said it would do everything to fight the decision. And that's it for Business News. I'm Cesar Vallejos. I'm 1 Week 25. Eagle News International will be back. Stay with us.
say dining is the best way to experience local culture. Let's join our EBC Bureau in Cambodia as she shows us some of the must-eats in Phnom Penh. Here's Crystal Ballesteros.
There's so much to eat and experience here in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. But did you know there's also a lot to eat?
Join us today as we take you on tour of a local restaurant that serves authentic Cambodian taste.
Get your taste buds ready. Fish amo and numbancho.
Anything else you can recommend?
Cambodian food.
Okay.
Which one?
So we have sausage, buttermilk sausage. I think you order first for this one.
What is that?
Natang.
Natang. Crispy rice pancakes. With crispy rice pancakes. Here we go.
Natang is a well-known appetizer in Cambodia that gives creamy, salty, and little sweetness on your food. One of the country's national food is fish amok, a type of curried fish wrapped in banana leaves with the flavor of coconut milk and kamai herb. A freshwater fish and bamboo shoot are most commonly used in Cambodian diet. Numbanchuk is a traditional breakfast of the locals. It's their own version of Cambodian rice noodles with fish curry served with some vegetables. Not only the locals are fond of these foods, but even foreigners are craving for this authentic flavor that Cambodia has to offer. Cambodians are also known with their unique way of cooking food, as the process is quite time-consuming.
Traveling here in Phnom Penh is not complete without trying their local dishes. Challenge your taste buds with a different flavor and aroma that will surely make your trip a memorable one. From Phnom Penh, Cambodia, I am Crystal Ann Ballesteros and I am one with 25.
Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you, Crystal. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles and we're one with 25.